Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Hello, Amy. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Amy, and thank you everybody else who's joining as well. I can see the chat is already flooded with people joining globally as well. So really nice to see everyone joining from all over the world as well on this first day of Lumio Palooza. By now, we are well into it. But if you are waking up, if you are just joining us for your first session, hello, welcome. These 2 days of webinars are luckily nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the Lumio team. They are some absolutely amazing ambassadors, people using Lumio in loads of different ways across the globe, including Amy this afternoon. So Amy, do you want to just start by just briefly introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Amy Parks. I am a teacher in the UK. I've been teaching for 4 years. I've been a Lumio ambassador for 3. And yeah, I hope my session today on empowering all learners to write is going to give you some excellent hints, tips, tricks, things to help support your lovely writers in your classes.
I reckon it will. Yeah, no, very much looking forward to it all as well. And of course, if everyone wants to be involved, the link to join Amy's sessions is in the chat. So click on that there. I'll just pop it in once more. So that is in there. And of course, if you've got any comments, if you want to say, oh, that's great, Amy, or ask any questions like that, feel free to pop those into the chat as well. And we'll monitor that and kind of keep chatting away in the chat as well. But Amy, really, really looking forward to your session. So I've added your slides to the stage. And the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, welcome. I'm so glad that so many of you could make it. It's lovely to see people from all over the place joining for today's session. So the session today is called the Teacher's Toolkit, Empowering All Learners to Write. I'm a very firm believer that all children can be taught to write regardless of what level they begin at, what level they come in at. All children have the capacity to be really successful and ambitious writers. So hopefully this session will give you some really good ideas, some tips and tricks. And any questions that you've got, as Mark said, please do pop them in the chat. It would be really lovely to hear some of those from you. So let's get ourselves started. Mark had already asked me to introduce myself, so I'm going to very quickly skip through this. This is my introduction, although I do have some links to my socials if you want to give me a follow. I'm quite often sharing things on there about writing and tech-enabled support for pupils. So I've kind of split the session into 3 parts, looking at the foundations of writing, then developing writers, and then moving on to flourishing writers. So that's looking at kind of the early stages, not just in the early years, but the early stages of writing, then moving on to how to scaffold, and then how to stretch and challenge. Okay, so a little bit of an activity for you guys to start off with. Which aspect of writing do your pupils in your settings find the most challenging? Have a go at voting between those. So we've got generating ideas, vocabulary, sentence structure, stamina, confidence, and editing. Hopefully I can give you some tips for all of these things today, but let's have a look at some of the results coming in. Okay, so generating ideas. Okay, look, it seems to be quite a popular one. Generating ideas seems to be a big one, and that's quite true of my setting as well. So yeah, mostly generating ideas. We've got a few coming in close second, things like sentence structure, stamina, editing. Lovely. So we've got some really good feedback there. Generating ideas seems to be the top one, which is great. I've got some tips in there for you that should help with that. So that's absolutely fantastic. I find generated ideas to be one of the trickier ones because a lot of the pupils that I have in my setting in particular have sometimes quite a difficult time accessing things that help to build that picture. They're not avid readers. They don't go on lots of different adventures with their families and things like that. So it can be really difficult for them to imagine things and figure things out like that to get the ideas for writing. So hopefully I've got some things there for you. So let's move through. So part 1 then, so the foundations of writing, supporting writing in the early years and also just supporting those foundations and early writers. One of the things that I quite avidly talking about with my colleagues is that writing starts long before any of the children hold an actual pencil. So they're talking to one another. They are, as they're growing and developing, they're learning all of these skills, looking at even things like tying shoelaces, build fine motor skills, being able to build their gross motor, to be able to build the stamina for writing. All of these things include, and then for kind of coming to the end with mark making, all of these things build together to make children successful writers. So let's have a look at some of the things that we can do to help support those really early writing skills. So this is just a really quick thing that I have done with some of my children, particularly in my class this year. Writing was a real barrier for them, which is part of the reason why I did my session on this to begin with. So they had real trouble with mark making and patterns and pattern recognition to be able to build their skills for writing. So something like this that's is quite an easy task for them to do. So all I ask the pupils to do, I just grab something like this from maybe somewhere like an online resource place like Twinkle or somewhere like that. And the children on either the smart board or on their devices on Lumio class are able to just have a go at practicing. And I'm just having a quick go at this now. But getting the children to, I've impressed myself with how close that was. Now, see, I've bragged now and it's gone off. But getting them to practice these sort of big movements on the screen and then condensing them down to smaller movements. So in the spirit of having a good go at these kinds of things, I'd like you guys to have a quick go at this and see what you think of this kind of activity. So I'm going to dip into some of your progress in a minute if I can. So this is from the teacher side of things. Obviously, you can check in on what pupils are doing. You can see their individual activities. So if you just grab a pen from the side, from your toolbar on the left-hand side, and then you can have a go. I'm being nosy to see where anybody's. There we go. Look, I can see some people have started to have a go at this. Their marks well ahead, eager beaver. But just something as simple as this can really help to strengthen their early writing skills and those mark making skills. It's something that I've found to be really successful with my pupils in my class. Really good question there from Sarah, asking about styluses. I know I've missed a couple. I will try and come back to them if I can. Students do sometimes use styluses, or they can use their finger. I recommend when they're first doing this activity, their finger's perfectly fine for it. They're just getting used to those movements. Then move on to a stylus when they're ready to move on to that kind of mark making with a pencil. So either is fine. They don't have to use a stylus, but equally, if you do have one, and then they can use an iPad for this as well. So just a really quick activity there that can help support them. So I'm going to move. I'm sorry if you're really enjoying this, but I'm going to just move on. Another early writing practice is knowing the flow of stories. So here's another activity for you to do. There are some audio instructions if you'd like to have a listen to those. It's just me telling the activity basically. But sequencing of stories, especially familiar stories, is another great writing tool. Before the children can write it down, they have to have a really good understanding of the story and the way that they write a story. So activities like this, I've just grabbed some widgets from Widget Online, which is a platform that we use in school. I'm sure lots of schools use it as well. Just using this kind of word to picture correspondence to help pupils understand exactly what they're doing. And the pupils literally just grab the things. I'm giving spoilers here. I've given you one already. So there you go. I'm modelling for you. But just getting the children to have a go at moving these into, I've put audio instructions on these as well. So for pupils who struggle with reading, it's really good for them to be able to hear the instructions. So just an activity like this helps them, and you can expand on this as much as you like. You can just have beginning, middle and end. You can just have boxes for the amount of plot points that you want the children to sequence and pick up on. You can even add things in, like asking the pupils to add text underneath, so that they could add things in and write their version of that part of the story. Or equally, they can add in audio instructions themselves, so they can add audio buttons in to be able to tell their version of the story, which is another great way of getting their writing skills developed and getting their understanding of story developed as well. So that's another activity that I find really, really beneficial for early writers. This one is one of my absolute favourites, and although it can take a little bit of extra prep work, I can assure you that it is really quite special when the children use this independently. And once you've developed a bank of these kinds of activities on Lumio, especially if your school or your education establishment has got Lumio Spark, you can use these activities, create a library of them that all of the staff in your setting can access. So once the hard work's been put in at the beginning, you'll have those activities forever then, and they can just be reused with your future pupils. So this particular activity is using colourful semantics. So it's a sentence building program that's really, really good. Some of my pupils came to me in year 3, so they're 7 years old, and they couldn't structure a sentence, and now they're writing 2 or 3 paragraphs at a time. So I know these foundations work really well. So the idea with this one is obviously that the children it's colour coded, which helps build that schema in their brain, and the children then have got some autonomy in what they choose for the caterpillar to be doing. So the caterpillar is the who. That's the only who, which gives them that kind of structure at the beginning of the activity. And then we've got 8, munched and swallowed. I've included 3 to try and broaden their vocabulary, so that they all mean the same thing, and I explain that to the pupils, but it just means that they can develop their vocabulary, and all of that oral repetition that the pupils do and you do as a teacher will really, really benefit them, and it will help them to kind of build up that bank of vocabulary, particularly with things like verbs and nouns. That really elevates their writing as they get further up the school. So rather than just saying a bug, they're being specific with their noun and saying it's a caterpillar. And then rather than being vague and just saying that they ate it, again, it's being very specific with their language. Show them what munched looks like, show them what swallowed looks like, give them that, maybe even give them pictures, which I've done before, and I've either put them on the slide with this sentence building, or I've done that as prior teaching beforehand. So they might have, say, munched. And then obviously with it all being colour coded, the children can just grab, so they can choose what their caterpillar's eating. I'm going to go with 3 plums, why not? And then when that's building their knowledge even further, and mine's eating 3 plums, I'm going to go with a Wednesday. It doesn't have to match the story. It can be whatever they want, giving them some ownership over their writing. So that's another nice activity. Devon, I agree. These kinds of things in kindergarten, early years are just perfect. Like I said, they can be a bit time intensive, and I'll be honest about that. They're not always the quickest activities to build, but once you've got them, my goodness, are they fantastic for that vocab development, and for that sentence structure as well. They've got a really clear idea of what to include in their sentences that they can then expand and build upon as you move through. So moving ahead now, that's our early years kind of writing. Obviously, I'll go back just 1 second just to quickly add to this one. Alongside all of this sentence building is obviously all of that fantastic stuff that you'll do in kindergarten and early years anyway. Things like all that mark making, drawing patterns, pencil control, all of those activities layered up lead to this activity where they're sentence building. They would then be able to go off and write these down. Now, one of the things, I haven't actually put it in here, but it's something that I do when I'm teaching. I'll also add videos of me modelling one of these sentences. So just underneath like a camera or like a visualizer, if you have one in your classroom, I'll model myself writing a sentence that I've made using this Lumio slide, and then I'll write it down on either a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and then the children can watch that back again and again. So it means that they can practice writing my example, but then they've got the stepping stones to then write their own, because they've seen how I've done it, and I'm already, telling them, oh, I've added a capital letter there, because every sentence needs a capital letter. They can go back and watch that whenever they like. So it really allows them to kind of build that foundational knowledge. So moving ahead to the second section of our webinar and our training. So this section focuses on developing writers. So scaffolding writing to support. Now, we all know, and we've all come across, I'm sure, you gain a class, they're brand new to you at the start of the year, and they are all in different places. They're all on a different journey. Some of them are at the age-related expectations. Some of them are nowhere near. Some of them are really far ahead, and we're going to get to those far ahead ones later. But this is for developing all writers, but specifically how to scaffold to support, and not just scaffolding to support those who are working below or behind where you would like them to be, but also scaffolding for pupils who you want to push on and stretch and challenge in your lessons. So let's begin by just looking at this. So it's moving from that readiness. So all those foundations, all those lovely activities that you've been doing from sort of kindergarten and then all the early years going through to year 1 and year 2. So that would be up to like the first grade. You're really getting them developed now to start becoming more independent. So the foundations are there, they're ready to be built upon. You've got them secure. Now you're giving them tools and strategies to help develop their writing even further. So with that in mind, we've got a little activity here for you. I'd like to know what support you already use in your classrooms or in your settings for developing writers. So what things do you use in your classroom to support writers? Just pop them in, pop your responses in. I'd love to see what you guys do in your settings. It doesn't have to be Lumio necessarily. Anything that pops through, I can talk through how I've adapted some of those things for Lumio. But just anything that you use to support your writers. Ah, lovely. We've got some coming in. We've got sentence stems. Yeah, a couple of sentence stems, graphic organisers, songs, and nice. We've got some really lovely ones here. Sound wall. Oh, that sounds interesting. Whoever's popped sound wall, I'd like to know what that is. It might be something I already do and it's just a different name. It's always the fun thing when you've got people from all over the place. They've got different names, haven't they? Handwrite, lovely. Printing practice, fine motor, lovely. Word banks, pictures, vocabulary work. There's some really great ones here. I'm going to move some of these over into the middle a little bit so we can see them nice and clearly. Graphic organisers, work, lovely. Got some really lovely things here. Modelled lessons. Yeah, they keep popping up outside of my little square, and it's just not okay. Templates, sentence, you're lovely. So we've got loads of really good examples there. Oh, thanks, Devon. You're a star. I'm looking forward to having a look at that in a minute. So lots of different things then, lots of different examples of things, lots of modelling, practice. Yeah, so quite a lot of these things I do in my practice, and there's some new ones that I'm going to go away and have a look at. They look really interesting. But I'm going to go through some of the things that I use, and some of the things are the same as the things I've got to show you in a moment. So let's have a look through and see what kinds of things we've got in the bank for. So here's some of the things I said. Sentence stems, word banks, lots of these came through, visual prompts and pictures, talk partners, shared writing, modelled writing, and success criteria. So lots of real similarities there. And all of these things are there not to give pupils a crutch, but it's to be able to give them the experience needed to be successful writers. They're brand new to writing, and even adult writers find certain styles of writing difficult. I think one of the biggest things about scaffolding is to make sure that children continue to enjoy writing. I find that the older children get, if they struggle with writing, I don't know if you find similar, but they start to lose interest because they don't feel successful, and it's nice to feel successful. Giving them that option and that opportunity really allows them to kind of, by giving them this scaffolding, it allows them to enjoy that success at different levels, but enjoy that success regardless. So I've got a bit of a group activity. I'm going to just set that up and it's going to throw you into groups. But this activity is one that I quite like to use, that shared talk, that partner talk. This really develops that. So I give them a picture prompt, and I can keep this exactly the same and just change the picture. It's a really quick setup, this one. So I'll set the activity up and I'll explain it as we'll go with let's go teams of 8. Now, the good thing about a group activity like this is yes, it can randomly or assign them, but you can also drag names to adjust the teams. So if you think, oh, that person's not going to work well with that person, you can manually adjust the teams. You don't have to leave them as they are. So it gives you real flexibility as the teacher and as the educator. So I'm going to start that workspace for you, and I'd like you to have a go at this. So the activity, the way that it works, all these workspaces will be kind of collaborating, and I'll open team ones just to show as an example. So the picture prompt is there. These symbols are from a writing scheme called The Right Stuff. It's written by a lady called Jane Constantine and her team. We use it in our setting, but the symbols are just lots of different writing techniques. Our children know them really, really well, so this wouldn't be a surprise to them, but just to anybody that's unsure of what they're supposed to be writing or typing in here, this is noticing, a noticing lens. They're called lenses. So what do you notice? What things can you see? So you might say that you can see a door. It can be as simple as that to begin with. If you want to use adjectives to describe the things you can see, absolutely can. And I would encourage the children to do so if they've got that in the bank that they can use. You can see the trees in the background, a chimney. So anything that you can spot. This is the touch. So what might you feel? You know, there are things that I would be able to probably feel. You might be able to talk about the texture of the brick in the cottage, or the texture of the leaves in the bushes, or the moss on the ground, or the leaves in between the fingers. And then what can they hear? What things might they hear? They might hear the whistling of a kettle floating through the window. They might hear, oh, I've stopped walking around, so the light's gone off. And then anyway, words, anything that you think, oh, do you know, that's really going to impress my teacher if I use that particular word. So you might think of a word for the trees, and you might think those trees aren't just tall, they're gigantic. And you might add gigantic down here because you know that's a really ambitious word. And any others you can think of that would really, you know, blow the teacher's mind and be like, wow, those are amazing. So I'll just pop into some different, so people have got, as you see, people have got different things. After this activity, once you've run this with your children in your class, you can then go and visit each team's area. So lots of people seem to have got birds as something that they can see. Flat stepping, so oh, nice expanded name phrase there. See, and you'd kind of pick these up as you worked through. Oh, and we've got pictures and everything. I love this. Team 3 being ambitious there. Rustling leaves, lovely. I haven't seen that one yet. So as you can see, the pupils would be able to then add all of this to their group area, and you can look through these and discuss them. You might then be able to take those ideas and pop them onto your working wall if you've got something like that in your classroom, something that they can look at all the time when they're writing. Or alternatively, if you're building up a Lumio as a bank of knowledge, that will be kept in the class session that's created every time, you know, when you start this up, and you can go back to that class session, start it again for those pupils. They've got all that lovely work that they've done. They can just go back and access. So that's one of the ways I use one of the ways I use group activities like this in group workspaces. I'm going to move on to the next one now, if it'll let me. Perfect. So this is another activity that I find is really useful. This activity I actually used with my class last week. So this is the pupils had to write a story about a natural disaster. The children were finding it very difficult to make the right choices for their adjectives because they weren't sure which ones to use to get the best effect. So I created this activity really quickly. The children had to sort them between positive and negative. Lots of the children were talking about a storm. They used a flood as their natural disaster. And they were saying things like, oh, the storm was peaceful. The storm was vibrant. And I had to explain to them, those aren't the type of words that you would use. So I added in a video of a storm brewing for them to watch and discuss on their tables. They then did this activity. We had a look at getting them to sort positive and negative adjectives. So, for example, they put in, obviously, dirty would be a kind of negative one if they're talking about the storm specifically. We do always have that conversation that some words can be positive in one aspect and negative in another, but I made it clear that these were talking specifically about the storm and the natural disaster that they were writing about. So things like neglected would be negative, sunny is quite positive, peaceful is quite positive. So the children would then sort through those adjectives. And that really helped them when they came to write their paragraph that was describing the storm. They found that so easy then to be able to go and look at the list of positive and negative adjectives. They wrote them down as they were working through them and kept them in their book. So as soon as they were ready to write that paragraph, they got that information ready. They knew not to use those adjectives, but they'd got a great bank of negative adjectives then that they could use to be able to write then a really successful paragraph about their storm approaching. Some of them went on even further then from that and looked at some adjectives that would describe other natural disasters, because not all of them wrote about a flood. Some of them wrote about a volcanic eruption. Some of them wrote about a tsunami. So this was a really great way to be able to get them to start thinking about those initial positive and negative adjectives before they then moved on to some more in-depth ones. So that's one that I use for sort of vocabulary level scaffolding. Right. I'd like you guys to have a little go at this one. This is now, that activity led to something like this. The one that I've just shown you with the sorting of the adjectives. Changing the mood. This is a vanishing close. This is a really great activity. I basically remove the adjectives. Your job on your handout then is to have a look at the blanks and fill them in based on whether you were doing a positive or a negative experience. So I asked the children to do a positive one first. So I'll just read this out very briefly, have a go at changing some of those adjectives and just add them in with your text button on the side. So Barry stared at the blank burger. Outside the blank window, a blank wind swept across the blank town. On the blank promenade, I'll pause there just to say that lots of children wouldn't know what a promenade was, so I included a picture just so they've got that mental image. Blank newspapers tumbled along, driven by the blank wind. The blank sea rolled up the blank beach, crashing against the blank rocks that fringed the blank shoreline. Again, wasn't sure if they'd know what the shoreline looked like, so I gave them an example of what the shoreline in this paragraph would look like. I then gave them some time to just have a go. So the children would then complete this activity from a positive standpoint. I'd then flip it to the negative. I want to see if anybody's added some adjectives in, because this one's one of my favourite activities to do with my class. I always find that that they have a really, really good go. Ooh, fancy. Here's fancy. Barry said at the fancy burger outside the open window, a brisk wind. See, and you get some really good language from this. So I would then be looking through this as the teacher. I might spot some and go, ooh, the fancy is a good way to describe the burger. Maybe it's a really, upscale restaurant. Let's jot that down. And we get this lovely bank of things that the class can use, not just that individual child. Those that are really flourishing can help support and scaffold the children that may be struggling. A delicious burger we've got there, Mark, well done. That one's a nice one. So we've got some really nice ideas there. Again, lots of delicious ones. This one always provides some really interesting adjectives, and they're great to kind of gather together, and then for the whole class can use. Then it doesn't make anybody feel left out because everybody's got access to the same thing. So that is another activity that I use to scaffold my learners. Moving on to this one. Now, this one's very similar to the early years one in terms of the kind of colour-coded sentences. What this one really is helpful for, that's slightly different, is that the children have got kind of a bigger variety of nouns that they can then play around with and add to. So the first one, again, similar to the one for for developing writers, they've got one singular thing to focus on. So he, this particular activity was for a writing outcome on the Iron Man. So the children used this as a starting point, and then were able to build on these and add to them in their own books. So he can, the bits were the same. And then we've got things like rip, and this helps them to be really purposeful with their choices as well. So for example, if they're choosing rip, some of these things won't apply. So they won't always make sense. And this is where the developing part comes in, where they're then using their own initiative and their own independence to be able to assess and edit whether these sentences make sense or not within their own writing. So for example, if they said rip strong cars, that's probably not the best choice of wording to use for that particular thing. So they might take these back out, have a think, okay, well, what could they rip? What could we rip instead? We might be able to rip, we might be able to rip houses, or they might be able to rip trees. But it's about just playing around with it and seeing what they can come up with. I found this particular activity to be, again, quite beneficial to help promote independence for those writers that are just a bit tentative with their own ideas. I find that giving them a bank of things allows them to spark off another idea. Yeah, this is great for small group sessions and for small group work. I've used this activity for interventions as well. So if there are children that are, significantly behind their peers, this kind of activity is great for that. The children can kind of access this quite independently because they either recognise the word or they recognise the symbol, because we use them quite regularly. So that's another fantastic activity to use to scaffold their writing. Moving on to the last section now. So we've worked through now up to flourishing writers. Their foundations are secure. They've, developed and used the scaffolding to help support themselves. This is where we now can support them still, but to stretch them beyond, to stretch them further, to challenge them to excel. And that's something that can be really difficult. And Lumio is brilliant at being able to give them a bit of independence while also coming alongside them to still support them. So here are lots of ways to deepen writing. The technical side is there. They can do all of the, spelling, punctuation, grammar, all of those skills are secure. But deepening writing really takes a lot of effort, and it's not without scaffolding. So these activities can really help things like audience, authorial choices, manipulating sentence lengths, figurative language, character viewpoint, more ambitious language, editing, writing for purpose, and structure. While some of these come through early on, really narrowing in on these can help take writers from being good to great. So here are a few activities that I use. So here's a quick activity that I sometimes give to some of my writers that are really flourishing and that need that little bit of extra stretch. So I give them a really simple sentence. The sentences aren't very long, they're all quite short sentences. And I then give them a bit of success criteria. So I give them a few things to edit, to improve in that particular couple of sentences. So the sentences were: Tom looked out of the window, the rain was falling, the river was getting bigger, people were moving their things, the water came into the town, Tom felt scared, he and his family left their house. So really short, simple sentences. And then I've given them a bit of a challenge. So add adjectives to describe the rain, river and water. So that one's quite an easy one to tick off. They then get more complicated as they move through. And of course, there would be scaffolding alongside with this. So I'd either give them a physical handout or I would include it on their Lumio slides as they were working through. Replace some boring words with better ones. I found using the term boring words with my class was one that they found quite funny, and it helped engage them, which is why it says boring words rather than kind of simpler words. Add punctuation where needed. So they might add things in. If they're adding a fronted adverbial, for example, they need to remember to add that comma in afterwards. And then make the paragraph more exciting and dramatic. So being able to add in further things and giving them the tools to help them do that by adding the things in for Lumio. Honestly, some of them seem like they would take a long time, and I very much appreciate that. But a lot of these I had, a lot of these activities I'd already created for my class, and like I said near at the beginning, they can be a bit of a time sink initially, but once you've got them, my goodness, they're so useful. And they could, if you've got things like Lumio Spark, you can share them amongst your colleagues, and even further afield if you've got a group that you've created a library with. So they're really good. I mean, this one was really quick. This was just a kind of snipped the success criteria from my teaching slides and then just typed this into Lumio. So this one didn't take too long. Some of them take longer than others, but this is a really nice activity to be able to kind of expand and then get them to talk about it. So don't just get them to do it in isolation. Get them to share the screen with each other, talk about what they've written. And I guarantee you, if one of them's got room for improvement, they're pretty quick to tell each other what they can improve on and make better. So they're quite good. They're very, very good at that, my class particularly. I'm sure other people's classes are the same. Right, let's have a look at this one then. So this is a match 'em up activity. These are really quick to make. This one is for personification. So this was an activity that I did for to help the pupils understand what personification is. It then led on to how we could specifically utilize that in that writing genre. But I like to show them across a range of genres so that they know it's not just a one-trick pony, that they can use it. They can use it in lots of different styles of writing. So the idea for this one is the object that they're talking about is on the left and the human quality for the personification is on the right. And all they need to do for the match 'em up is literally just move one into this side and then move one into the other side. Their reading skills important here. They need to know that it would actually link. So they spend a lot of time reading through this, reading through each one. They then move them in and it matches them up if they're correct, or like you just saw there, if they're not correct, it will send them back up to the top. So this is a really nice one. So they can just literally try and match them up. And if they, like I said, if they don't match, they go there. So the chocolate cake in the fridge, this is my favorite one, was calling her name. Yeah, so they go through like that, and then they'll match up in the middle. These particular ones are my one of my favourite ones, the match 'em ups. They're great for kind of stretching them on a little bit further, but they're also great for scaffolding too. If you want pupils to be able to see where those links are, it's perfect for things like that. I know some of these are quite tricky, aren't they? And some of them could be, some of them could match multiple different ones. So yeah, some of these are quite tricksy, but it also just opens up discussion, because they might then start to debate, which happened in my class. They then very heatedly debated that they were absolutely right that one of them fit that particular ending, and another child was absolutely adamant that that couldn't possibly be the case. But they did both work, and it was a really nice discussion point for those pupils, to really kind of get them thinking. Right before my brain explodes as well, because I think it's the heat's clearly getting to me and the and the laptop today. We're in a heat wave in the UK at the moment, for those of you that are not UK based, and we're just not used to this level of heat. So we're all feeling it a little bit, I think. So this activity is another one of my absolute favourites, and I seem to have a lot of favourites, but this one's a really good one too. So this is a very quick activity to set up. Really elevates their writing a lot more than you'd think it would. So this is specific noun choices. This will lead on to an activity that I'm going to show you in just a moment. But the idea of this activity is that you give them the very basic noun. So, for example, dog, cat, bird, fish, animal, tree, flower. You then get them to think of their own option. So with dog, you're going with breed. So you want to get them to be really specific. You want them to think things like Dalmatian, or Chihuahua, or Rottweiler, or German Shepherd, or something very specific. And again, for all of those activities, you're going to want them to, think of really specific things. Cat, again, you want to look at either breeds or a colour of cat, possibly, to be really specific. So for cat, you might say something like a calico or a tabby cat. Bird, again, you just want really specific things to go with that list. It really elevates their writing, particularly when they're building a setting description. If it's a general setting, you can kind of get away with vague nouns. But if you're writing about somewhere specific, so for example, there's a book that I'm reading with my own children at home at the moment called Wildlands, and it's basically set in a future where Britain have rewilded a big section of the country, sort of in Scotland and the north of England, and the way that the character describes some of the animals that she's seen as they end up going through this particular bit of wildland. It's fantastic because they're so British specific, and because I live there, I could picture them really clearly because I've seen them before. I've seen them in my own garden. So when the author's describing them, it builds a really clear picture in my mind. And that's something that this activity is fantastic for. It allows the reader of that of that story that they're writing, or that piece of whatever they're writing, to really have a clear image in their brain. So I can see a few people, and like I say, it's really quick, isn't it? It's not a slow activity. It's something that you can do as a quick 5-minute starter at the beginning of your lesson. It then leads on to the activity that I'm about to show you now, which is a really, really fun one. So it's called Name It. This is an activity I really enjoy. The activity we've just done, where you've got specific things, you use it to then kind of up-level this paragraph. So the girl who came from a planet soon reached the town and found the street. You see, they're very vague names. The school was empty except for the boy who was climbing a tree in the playground. They made their way to the market and wandered past stalls selling fruit, vegetables and sweets. They bought a fruit to eat and then walked to the shop. Inside there were cages. In one, a dog sat watching them. In another, a cat lay sleeping. Insects swarmed in a small glass cage. On top of the counter was a huge tank where fish swam around. The girl chose an animal to buy. Outside, a strange bird swooped overhead. A car pulled up. Inside, they could see a pile of glittering jewels. So it doesn't necessarily have to make complete and total sense. They don't know what this story's from, and this is something that I just made up. But I think maybe I got it from a training session. But either way, from somewhere. The idea then is to take that and be really specific. So here's some I've changed, and then there are some red examples. And I wonder if anybody wants to, just have a little go at this kind of on your own. So that's the bits that I would change. The girl who came from a planet soon reached the town, and then the red bits are the ones that the pupil would be doing. So here was my example. So Lorna, so I've been specific with the character's name, who came from Venus, soon reached London and found Vicarage Street. Drury Grammar School was empty except for Travis, who was climbing a tree in the playground. They made their way to Camden Market and wandered past stalls selling strawberries, sweet potatoes and cola cubes. So that was the fruit, vegetable and sweets. I'm just being really specific with the nouns that I'm choosing. They bought a mango to eat and then walked to the pet store. So I've said pet store. This is a really good opportunity to talk with pupils. Reading the rest of that, because it's talking about animals in cages, dogs, cats. You've got to think, well, where would all of those things be? They've got to be then really specific with their noun, and it just helps them to build that picture. So what kinds of things could we swap here? Has anybody got any ideas that they might want to pop into the chat? So they might have, inside there were cages. In one, a chihuahua sat watching them. You just get the pupils to be kind of specific with what they're going to choose. In another, you might say a Siamese lay asleep. Again, this part's interesting. Insects swarmed in a small glass cage. That verb there, swarmed. Get your pupils to talk about that and say, well, what insects swarm? You can't have certain insects because they don't swarm. So that verb would be pointless being there. So what insect could we be talking about? What things swarm? And then that's another good discussion point. You can talk about things like locusts that swarm, and mosquitoes that swarm, things that are kind of band together. So it's a really good activity for that. And that's one I really enjoy doing with my class. So I'll move from that one. Right, that is the end of the session. That's flown by, hasn't it? My goodness. I have absolutely loved sharing some of these ideas with you. And I've got some ideas from you as well, which has been fantastic. But I've really enjoyed sharing them with you. And I hope I've given you at least something that you can take away and use with your class. All of the things that I've done are available in the link that you'll be able to access, so you can grab any of these activities to use and adapt with your classes. Please keep, have a check out of the community. It's such a wonderful community to be a part of, and there are so many people that are willing to help and give ideas for things. So all of these, if you click on any of those links, it'll take you to all of these different places where you can learn more, connect more, and it's a wonderful thing to do. And then before I finish, this one's an important one to me. I'm an ambassador. I've been an ambassador for a few years now, as I said at the beginning, and it's such an incredible community of educators, full of just passionate, wonderful people who love teaching and love using Lumio, and have helped me so much on my journey, and hopefully now I can do the same for others. So if you have, got a passion for Lumio or a passion for teaching, and this is something that you'd like to, consider delving into, there's a button there to apply. Go and be an ambassador. It's great. And then you get to do lovely things like this too, where you get to share with people. So yeah, if it's something that you'd be interested in, I'm happy to talk to you about being an ambassador. Or if you want to have a little bit more of a look, you can click on the link and find out what it's all about. there we go. That's it.
That's absolutely incredible, Amy. I think time has flown by, just because there were so many things, one after another, that I was thinking, oh yeah, I wish I could do, yes. So, and I think the comments have just reflected that completely, that there's so many takeaways from that as well. So thank you so much, Amy, for entertaining us and giving us all of those great professional development takeaways from this as well. A lot of the comments are saying, oh no, I missed the beginning, or when can I get the recording? Because I think I need to watch this and pause and go, oh, that one, pause, oh, and that one. So I've put a link in the chat here. One of them, the first one, is feedback for this session. So if you've got any feedback for Amy and for Lumio itself, that link is there as well. The certificate for you for joining it is here as well. All of these sessions are going to be recorded. We're just going to kind of clean them up and just post them onto YouTube. They will be coming in the next week or so, depending on, we've got a lot of sessions to kind of do for that. And then, of course, signing up to more sessions. If your brain isn't quite full yet, there are more going to be happening over the next couple of days. We've got some more amazing ambassadors like Amy's referred to, sharing their expertise. Many of them are in the chat as well, and sharing all their thoughts as well. So feel free to sign up for those. They are also within that as well. Amy has also got a post up here as well. She's beaten me to my copy and pasting links. So this other one here is that social challenge. So it'd be great to kind of hear your feedback, any thoughts you've got, sharing those on socials as well. And we've got a link down there, Lumio Palooza. I'm just going to add in Lumio Palooza 2026, just so that we can kind of keep track of them all as well. That link is also in the chat as well. I'll post it up along the bottom there. And if you just at social, Lumio socials as well, and then we're going to enter all of you who do share on socials into a challenge to receive that $25 e-gift, or you can actually redeem that in proper money, Amy, or anything else there as well. So that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you everybody else for joining as well. Amy, you've been absolutely amazing as always. So thank you so much for everything you've done for this as well.
Oh, you're so welcome. Looking forward to next year.
Yeah. We've got a whole 2 days of it. First day, we don't wish your life away. But yes, very much next year as well. Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Amy, for your time, your effort, your commitment, and your mindful of ideas for this as well. Thank you, everybody else, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.